Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure humulite. Trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest humulite reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth humulite. Learn more from Mind to Market by visiting blackearth.com.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 at Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. And, of course, also shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. I am back from a great couple days in Nashville, Tennessee. And as I mentioned last week, I was able to stop in at the RFD-TV studios in Nashville, where Rural Radio is headquartered. Had a great time on set on RFD-TV on the Market Day Report. And also had a couple days with some friends and taking in Music City. It was a really fantastic time. And Lindsay and Calvin and the rest of the RealAgriculture team did a great job covering for me here on the show. But it is great to be back. Broadcasting today from Calgary, Alberta. Going to be presenting late this afternoon, to a large group of partners from MMP. So we're going to be talking about what are some of the issues going on in agriculture, what are some of the things that farmers are thinking about on your minds, what are some of the issues from a policy perspective and trade that are really impacting not only the Canadian market, but of course the United States market as well. There's some common threads. There also are some differences. And what I thought I would do in today's show, whatever. We don't need guests to have fun here. What we're going to do is we're going to walk through some of the things I'm going to talk to MMP about today. So I'm looking forward to that. It will just be kind of maybe a bit of a warm up. Put it that way. Maybe a bit of a warm up for my presentation. I want to walk through some things with you, and I want your feedback. Specifically, in one of the segments, what we're going to do is we're going to look at what Canada needs to do. And I was kind of riffing off of Friday's show where Lindsay and Kelvin and Tyler McCann talked about what are some of the things that Canada needs to do. And I thought they did a pretty good job, but I have my own thoughts as well. And I've said this before. When you're when you're a regular on a radio program and then you're not there and you listen to the radio program, you're like yelling at your windshield with your fist in the air about trying to interrupt and get into the conversation. So this is the opportunity today to get into the conversation. Now, what we have today is we've got a big meeting between Prime Minister Carney and President Trump. Now, they have not actually had the meeting yet, but here I'm going to talk a little bit about what I want to see out of this meeting. And it could go a whole bunch of different ways, everybody. A whole bunch of different ways. But Prime Minister Carney is really walking into the wolf's den here, the lion's den, right? And there's some world leaders that have had great success in the Oval Office. There's other ones that have had a terrible reaction. And just because Carney's last appearance went really well, I was actually in D.C. when the last time that Carney was in D.C. But just because the last one went well, it doesn't mean the next one will. Look at what happened with Zelensky. The bit of the flip. Zelensky's first appearance in the White House was that famous blow-up where President Trump and Vice President Vance claimed that he wasn't being respectful. He wasn't dressed for the occasion. He wasn't saying thank you. It was a disaster. It was a disaster. And then the next time he shows up, it went really well. That's when he was there with all the European leaders. So we'll see. Keep your fingers crossed because it is absolutely critical. It is critical. Absolutely critical. Let me emphasize that. Did I mention it was critical? That we have a North American trade pact. It's critical for Mexico. It is super critical for Canada. And yes, it is also important for the United States. And you look what's happening in the bean market and the lack of Chinese buying of U.S. soybeans. U.S. needs some trade partners. And Canada and Mexico are willing to be that. They are willing to be that. It's very important that trade is fixed with countries like China, some of the things the EU does, but not all trade partners are the same, and I've been saying this. Also, it's not like China is just taking out their frustrations on U.S. soybeans. Canadian canola farmers know exactly what I'm talking about here. There's a lot of things at work here, and I think in so many ways, we're looking at some of this very one-dimensionally and not comparing to other jurisdictions and other contexts and looking at the full picture. So we got lots to dive in there. Absolutely. For sure. We're also going to talk today about the FCC land value report for the first 6 months of the year. Lindsay and Kelvin talked a little bit about this on a Friday show. I've got some thoughts as well. And then we've also got some time for some listener feedback today on the program. Some of you have been very vocal. Now, there are ways to get a hold of us, and one of them is new. You remember, I've always been saying, hey, listen, you can call the RealAg feedback line, and that number is 855-776-6147. Here's the beauty. Here's the additional part. It's also a text line now. So all you got to do is text 855-776-6147, and I get it. That's right. Direct line to yours truly. So do this. 855-776-6147. You can call or you can text. You can also send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Okay, let's do this. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to dive in on this Trump and Carney meeting and talk a little bit about what Canada needs to do going forward. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM, back right after this. It's now time for a product spotlight. We're talking right now to Tim Dara, canola technical strategy lead for Bayer. As growers are thinking about hybrid selection for this upcoming year, what's compelling in the DeKalb portfolio?
I mentioned DK401TL. That's a special product, I'll be honest. It yields fantastic. It offers the dual trait in terms of TrueFlex and LibertyLink, so it gives a lot of flexibility for growers. It just has a lot of great fits across Western Canada. We're also offering a new hybrid this year on the TrueFlex side of things, DK904TF, which is the highest yielding glyphosate-resistant hybrid that we've ever tested. It has a great opportunity for guys in those areas that are looking for that fit. We're right now in the middle of that seed selling season, and we're in the middle of our DeKalb Harvest Rewards offer. In that offer, growers stand to save up to $75 a bag on canola when they book by October 31st. And that's for all DeKalb hybrids, so the entire lineup's available for that offer. And if growers are interested about that and want to learn more, they can talk to their rep or talk to their agronomist, or they can go to DeKalbRewards.ca and find out more about it.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Hey sports fans, the RealAg Hockey Pool is back for the 2025-26 NHL season, brought to you by Cantera Seeds and Alliance Seed. You can visit realagriculture.com/hockey to register your team and make your picks before October 10th. See you on the ice. And this is going to be a lot of fun. And you can try to win the pool. It's just a box pool. You basically go through it. We give you the names of the players. You need to know nothing about hockey. Nothing. In fact, I will guarantee that somebody that knows nothing about hockey will probably win this pool over the largest of hockey fans. It's always a lot of fun. So you register your team name, which I expect. I want some funny names. I want creativity. I want some innovation. And please check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. realagriculture.com/hockey. Very cool. There's going to be monthly prizes, and there's also going to be a really cool grand prize that I don't know what I'm supposed to talk about yet. Okay, it involves the playoffs. I'm just saying, it involves the playoffs. I can't, you know what? I shouldn't even have told you that. I can't tell you anymore. Oh boy, yeah. Anyway, how about those Blue Jays? Wow. Unbelievable. No, several people that were at games 1 and 2. And like, it's awesome the Blue Jays are up 2-0 in this series. It's even better it's against the Yankees. And did you see how defeated Aaron Judge was? Like, we like playing here, but they just got our number. Now, here's what's super important. The series is not over. The Yankees lineup is the best offense in baseball. It sure the heck didn't look like that in games 1 and 2 at all. But it is not over. We got to win one more, and the game to close out is always the hardest to win going into what will be a ruthless Yankee Stadium. Oh boy, those fans, I've been there a couple times. They are ruthless on a July Tuesday night. Never mind here in October. This is when playoff baseball is so awesome, and looking forward to tonight's game. Indeed, go Blue Jays, absolutely, go Blue Jays. And second team I'm kind of pulling for a little bit here. We'd like to see the Cubs come back against the Brewers. They have really sputtered out. Brutal. Can you imagine if there's a Brewers-Blue Jays World Series? That Major League Baseball and like TV networks would have a conniption about how bad the ratings would be for that World Series. But go Blue Jays, absolutely. Okay, today we have got a big meeting between Prime Minister Carney and President Donald Trump in the White House. And at the time of me recording this, the meeting has not happened. Okay, so when you're listening to this, probably by the podcast or Rural Radio, the meeting has happened. So just, I want to timestamp that because I think it's important to remember, as I said in the opening, this can go many different ways. It is fundamentally crucial, that's the word of today. I'm overusing it, and we're only in segment 2 of the show. We have to have this North American trade deal secured. It would be disastrous for the economies of all three countries. All three countries, if this trade deal is not secured. And for some of you, and I'm talking to some of you, this is not like a Canada versus the U.S. or isolating maybe some of our Mexican listeners, however many there are of you. There are some of you in probably all three countries that have the attitude of, meh, whatever, it's okay, we'll be fine. It'll be all good. I don't think so. I tend to very much disagree. And as much as Prime Minister Carney won the election last spring with his elbows up, here we go, we're ready to fight, the relationship with the United States is fundamentally over. Not so fast. Maybe you Stampede Wrestling fans, there was a saying, not so fast, Mr. Whalen. That's exactly what's at work here. Not so fast. The Canadian economy is heavily reliant on the United States, and it will be so going forward as well. You can't avoid it. And as much as the U.S. wants to believe that it's somehow self-sustainable, it would be an economic disaster for it to go alone as well. We have seen tremendous growth and tremendous wealth created because of this relationship. So Abacus Data, and we had David Coletto on the show last week, a couple weeks ago, I can't remember. He's put out some new research. And here's what Carney is really up against. They've got some new data on the top issues facing Canada. So this is what Carney is trying to tackle as he heads into the White House. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure. I don't have American data to compare this to, but I don't think it's much different. So Canadians were asked to pick the top 3 things that you are concerned about from an issue standpoint. 62% of Canadians that answered the survey selected the rising cost of living. That's right. Expenses are up. So this isn't just an issue in farming, everybody, with input prices being very sticky and not declining. Canadians are just the consumer, the regular taxpayer that is by far the most. It's 62%. Then we fall into the next bunch. We've got healthcare, the economy, housing affordability, and then President Trump, all within 33 to 35%. So Donald Trump and his administration, 33% of Canadians had that in their top 3 of concerns. It's kind of interesting because if you go back to the election, this was the number one concern. It was all about who would be the best to lead Canada against an administration that was talking about the 51st state. This was the only concern during the election, and Pierre Poilievre really pooched himself based on what he did or did not do in his messaging regarding that. Now, President Trump, he has some problems on his mind as well heading into this White House meeting. He's getting a lot of criticism from farmers, I think, that supported him. This whole issue about the support for Argentina, I think it was like, $20 billion, at a time where Argentinian farmers and soybean growers are kicking U.S. butt when it comes to exports to China. Still waiting. China has not bought a single bushel of U.S. soybeans here in the fall. And that the window, this isn't a year-round market traditionally. This is something, the U.S. only exports beans until sometime in, I think it's the back end of the first quarter of the new year. So the window, it's open now. It's kind of like time travel. Remember, you'll like where there's like they had to run through the time window. And if that window closed, you were stuck in the time period that you were. Too much sci-fi in my youth. So we are going to hear today about I think about an over 50% chance, is what I've been hearing, of a pretty substantial package going out to U.S. farmers. There's rumors it could be somewhere between, I don't know, I've seen a bunch of numbers, somewhere between $10 and $16 billion in value. Rumors were flowing around the back end of last week that it was going to be something like $105 per acre to U.S. soybean growers, which is very interesting because that's pretty much, just round numbers, the same as what the USDA forecast is on losses per acre for soybeans. So essentially, if this program works out the way that people are expecting it to, the entire loss on average for the U.S. soybean grower will be covered. Now, some are arguing that this is premature, this program, not because farmers aren't hurting, because there's this promise of this November meeting between President Xi of China and President Donald Trump where they are going to attempt to secure some sort of a deal. It's kind of, and what potentially could happen here is the U.S. secures some sort of arrangement, like sort of like that phase 1 deal, which is the world's largest grain contract in history. And if they were to do the same, farmers would have received $100+ an acre for growing soybeans, and then also potentially we would see increased buying from China. I think the taxpayer would have that's going to be a little bit tough. The Wall Street Journal editorial board, great piece in the Journal today, talking about this potential announcement and some of the concerns for it or around it. So both men walking into the Oval Office, trying to show power, but also facing some real challenges in regards to how they are viewed. In the Canadian market, there definitely is a lot of criticism. I am being critical. I've written editorial about this in terms of Carney's lack of action. His lack of action. A lot of talk, not much action. I think there's a song about that. It was a good one. Who wrote that? I can't remember who wrote that. So I'm really hoping that we get a repeat performance of what we saw last time in the White House. What I'm fearful of here's what I'm fearful of, this sort of made-for-TV experience that we're all living in right now. Canada, Mark Carney seems to be very eager to give things up. He's looking for a deal. He wants to put this issue of the threat of the Trump administration and although the 51st state stuff has sort of died down, this idea that the U.S. doesn't need Canada, he wants to put this behind him. It would be a major win less than 1 year into him being prime minister. So he seems very eager for a deal. It seems like the opposite on the other side of the other side of the room. What I've been hearing from a lot of people close to the negotiating team is Canada's getting nothing in return. That it's not very clear what exactly President Trump really wants. Now, that's by a line item basis, but it's also in terms of, do you actually want a deal at all? And does this get drug out? And based on some of the economic uncertainty that exists in both countries, I'm not sure we want to add things to the mix to be drug out. I think it would be of major benefit to all three economies if they could sort of, I guess, review, not renegotiate. But again, that is not some of the messaging that is coming out of the U.S. administration or U.S. news outlets, where late last week, there was a lot of talk about how, well, we have this agreement, but we'd like to renegotiate and really chunk this into a bunch of bilaterals, which creates more confusion, creates more administration, it creates more compliance. It could become a non-tariff trade barrier in essence. And while we'll hear lots about tariff revenue, and we'll hear lots about country of origin, and we'll hear a lot, all that happens is it has a negative impact on the economies. And so I think it's fundamentally important that the bigger picture is seen here, and agriculture is very much under the premise of do no harm. Do no harm. The deal's worked out very well. It's been very good for ag. Now, there are pockets of both countries, and there are segments of the agricultural economy in both countries, Canada and the U.S., where there needs to be some things fixed. What would be really, really fascinating to watch is if Canada and Mexico are treated more harshly, and we go through with a much finer tooth comb on these agreements than that happened with Japan, that happened with South Korea, that happened with the UK, and that happened with the EU. Hopefully, less theater and more doing a deal. That's what I would like to see, but we will definitely see what happens. When we come back on RealAg Radio, we're going to dive into what I think Canada needs to do to achieve its full potential. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147.
Important update from FMC. Precision Pack DB878 Pro herbicide is now registered for use in front of oats, along with spring wheat, durum, winter wheat, and barley. DB878 Pro herbicide delivers proven kochia control, including herbicide-resistant biotypes, plus extended control of cleavers, dandelion, narrow-leaved hawksbeard, and volunteer canola. And with Precision Pack herbicide customization, you get the acres you need. No leftovers, no wasted time. See your local participating retailer today.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hefner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Ever hear that good things come to those who wait? Well, we think it's more like great rewards come to those who book their Invigor hybrid canola early. Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower Program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all your Invigor needs by November 14th. Speak with your local retailer about eligible hybrids. Terms and conditions apply. Book early. Come out ahead.
It's a good time to book next year's canola while this year's results are fresh, especially when it saves you money. I love when I save money. Save up to $75 per bag of canola with DeKalb Harvest Rewards, but only until October 31st. Visit DeKalbRewards.ca for details. Shaun Haney of RealAgriculture here with you today on RealAg Radio, broadcasting from Calgary, Alberta. Got a beautiful view. I'm up by the airport. Got a beautiful view of downtown Calgary, underrated skyline in North America. You can see the Calgary Tower, the mountains behind. It's very, if you've never been to Calgary for our American audience, I highly encourage you to come to the Calgary Stampede sometime or during the winter to hit some skiing out west of the city. But it's got a very Denver-esque sort of view to it. Very, very much like Denver. When I'm driving into the south end of the city, it always reminds me of the same experience of driving in to Denver, to Calgary and Denver. I'm not sure if they're officially sister cities, but they should be. They should be for sure. I ran some numbers. This is interesting. There's a lot of talk about what's going on with soybeans and whether American farmers are going to be compensated significantly to backfill for some of those losses. President Trump trying to show thought or appreciation for the farmers that have supported him in his political career and who he would say are making sacrifices as China is using soybeans as leverage in the negotiations. So that's what we're going to hear in some of the messaging. If you look at the November contract for soybeans and the November contract for canola, here's what's kind of interesting. Now, they don't, both oilseeds, obviously. What is fascinating is that they do follow each other, but they don't. So there was a time period in the last year. If you look at the last 12 months of both November contracts, I guess if you change it to 3 months or 6 months, you're going to see a little bit of a percentage difference. I'm going to acknowledge that. But if you just look at the last year, the price performance of both is actually almost the same. We've got soybeans down 4.55%. We got canola down 5.83% on the futures contract. Now, I have not factored in basis here. I have not factored in cost of production. I'm talking just the futures price. So before you attack me and get all, yeah, but Shaun, yeah, but hey, Haney. No, we're talking about just the performance of the futures contract. There was a huge divergence this past spring where we saw soybeans, if you look at it, soybeans have kind of just sideways traded for the most part over the last 12 months. Canola has not. At one point in the year, canola was up 14.7% compared to the beginning of the year, a year ago. But now it's slid off pretty considerably, of course. We're down, like I mentioned, we're down 5.83%. So they've kind of ended up at the same place, which I think is interesting because they're kind of running in these sort of parallel trade environments. Now, China is, I've looked at the recent trade data on canola, but if you think back to the last time that China was really attacking canola in Canada, they found other ways to get it. They got it, all of a sudden the UAE was this large purchaser of Canadian canola. We may see some of that happen again, but China's really taken out on North American oilseeds. It's not just a U.S. soybean thing. It's not just a Canadian canola thing. It's North American oilseeds facing same challenges, a restricted trade, and whether it's less demand or it's whatever the reason is, it's why people are really suggesting we need to really increase the biofuel, the domestic biofuel industry in both Canada and the U.S. to make up for, to backfill some of the demand on canola. and soybeans. Okay, let's get to what I think needs to happen in Canada. So here's what I think Carney needs to do. And he's not going to ask me. So I'm screaming into the void here. Okay. This is me screaming into the void. Thank you for listening. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things, 7-point plan for Mr. Carney. Probably not inclusive. I do encourage you, if there are things that you think I've forgotten here or I've missed on, I would love your thoughts as well. And maybe it's not just addition. Maybe you think some of these should be taken away. That's also possible as well. I'm just trying to get the conversation going here for all of us. And these are in no particular order as well. Okay. And some of them are a little bit connected to each other. So here's the Shaun Haney 7-point plan on canola. Or sorry, this Shaun Haney 7-point plan for Canada. Oh, gracious. It's only Tuesday. I need a holiday. I was just on one. Oh, shoot. Okay, number 1. Competitive tax rates. This is personally and business, corporate tax rates. Canada is this land of where we seem to be really comfortable with just raising taxes, or, we don't need to worry about the tax jurisdictions of other areas or what other, countries or areas are doing. No, we're Canada. No, we need to stop this. We need to stop it. If we're going to, if the country is going to attract and it's going to retain innovators and entrepreneurs, and really be competitive, then there needs to be competitive tax rates. There does. And, I'm in Nashville, Tennessee last week, and this is the sort of the geek in me a little bit. Tennessee, no personal income tax. There's a sales tax, there's usage taxes, right? Consumption taxes, we would call them. There's an example, and I'm not saying that Canada gets rid of personal income tax, but these are the things that you're competing with. Hey, if I'm going to start a business, is it easier for me to attract employees to a state like Texas that has no personal income tax, or to a place like Ontario where people get the what taxed out of them? So competitive tax rates. And I think it's important that you look at the personal and the corporate. And some of the accountants listening to this probably have some thoughts and probably maybe argue with what I'm saying, or maybe provide. I would appreciate your feedback on that and what you think about it and what needs to be done. It's not about being the lowest, but it's about being competitive. It's about being competitive. And maybe what should be added to that is the tax incentives on certain kinds of companies that we are trying to draw into the country, whether that is tech, that's manufacturing. And I know people push back. Oh, yeah, look at that company. They got this whole big tax break. That's being competitive. That's the kind of stuff that you need to do in today's kind of world, global environment. Okay, number 2. Cutting of regulations. This is an easy one. We need more of a focus on this. There are too many Canadians that are comfortable that with high barriers of regulation, as if the government is always right and they are trying to protect you from something. And you need to have some regulations, let's be honest. But I think we need to have a little bit of firmer of review of some of the regulations that are out there. And I also think regulatory harmonization is important. If we think about what later on we're going to get to what I think needs to happen between Canada and the U.S., there's an example where I think we do need to have some regulatory harmonization where there's things running in sync. In some cases, not all, probably fewer than more, Canada may have less regulation than the U.S. does, and vice versa. These are things we need to work out, especially if we're going to be trying to push more of a North American kind of market. We need a hyper focus on competitiveness. I believe that this attitude of fluffy clouds and sunshine that the Trudeau government talked about for 10 years hurt our competitiveness as a country. We didn't have to compete. We had the beaver and maple syrup, and everybody around the world loves us. Not so fast. I'm not saying people around the world don't like Canadians. I'm saying that this is the resting on your laurels part of it. This is what complacency looks like. Less complacency, more competitiveness. That needs to be more of the attitude. Absolutely so important. We've talked about it already. Solidify the North American trade deal. It is like, needs to be more operation number one for Mr. Carney. Just absolutely. Canada exports just under $600 billion a year to the United States. $600 billion. Keep that in mind. And some of you are running around saying, don't need America. Europe, or better yet, China are the future. People. Remember, Canada exports just under $600 billion a year to the U.S. The EU buys $35 billion, and China buys $30 billion per year. It's not anywhere close in dollars. $600 billion versus a combined $65 billion between the EU and China. Lord. Canada's first economic priority is securing its strong economic ties to the United States. Hands down. So something I've also picked up on, and this is the cultural component of things, and it does tie to a little bit of the competitiveness. I think there needs to be more of a discussion about renewing the Canadian entrepreneurial spirit. This is something that kind of fascinates me, and I think it's very tied to the perception of risk. It's tied to the perception of risk. I think we need to foster more of an entrepreneurial spirit. And I don't know if that happens through grade school. I don't know if that happens through programming in colleges and universities. Maybe we do it through Netflix. I don't know. All ideas are good ideas at this point. But we need more entrepreneurial, because the more entrepreneurial spirit we have, the more business success, small business success in rural Canada, the more corporate success we have in our large cities like Vancouver and Calgary and Toronto. Fostering that real entrepreneurial spirit and not punishing those that don't have success. That's another thing. Get rid of the tall poppy syndrome. Get rid of it. Tall poppy, gone. Targeted industrial policy on something like biofuels. And they talked about this on Friday's show, and Kelvin and Tyler kind of disagreed. I do think where it makes sense, we do need to really push industries that have strategic advantages long term. And I think biofuels, from an agricultural example, is perfect here. What are the things that we need to do from a clean fuel regulation? Have the policy to really enable, to show the companies that this is a place to invest in biofuel production, right? This is a place to have crush facilities. This is a place to have renewable diesel production centers. This is a place that could be, with 20 million acres of canola, as an example. We've got corn in parts of the country. We've got a growing soybean acreage. This is a place where biofuels, and I'd even mention wheat and hybrid rye as examples. This is a place where biofuels could really excel. Especially when we talk about being a diversification away from the reliance on China. And finally, reduce trade infrastructure or logistical bottlenecks. This is more of an ag-specific one, but it does impact other industries like energy and forestry and mining. Instead of us talking about, okay, we got a trouble with this bridge, or we got a trouble with this port, or, boy, if we just had better rail service here. Well, let's fix it. Let's stop talking about it. Let's fix it. And I said this was an 8-point plan. I lied. I said it was a 7-point plan. I lied. It's an 8-point plan. My last point, and you've heard me talk about this so many times, action. We need action. That's what is fundamentally missing. So there's my 8 points. You tear them apart. Let me hear what you think. You can send me a text, 855-776-6147, or you can call that number for the RealAg feedback line, or send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk about that FCC land value report. I think there's some interesting things to chat about to build on the conversation from the RealAg Issues panel on Friday. We'll do that when we come back. Shaun Haney with RealAg Radio, back right after this.
Soil health is under pressure, but real solutions start below the surface. Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure Humulite. Formulated for performance, backed by consistency, trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth Humulite. Learn more from Mine to Market at blackearth.com.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
We're back here on RealAg Radio. Hey, from nutrient management to the latest weather, market, and ag trends, The Dirt, an economics podcast, is your place for farm-smart topics to boost your profitability. Join Mike Howell on Season 4 of The Dirt podcast, available now at nutrient-economicswithak.com. Oh, man. So much fun. We've got so much going on right now in the industry. I had a buddy that texted me, farmer from the U.S. He's just like, man, there is no shortage of stuff for you to talk about. And we're getting into the season here where, like, harvest is kind of, well, in Western Canada, harvest is pretty much wrapped up. In Central and Eastern Canada, there's still a ways to go, especially if you got corn and corn and some flowers in Manitoba. But I'll put it to you this way. I'm just getting into the harvest. I'm just getting into the time of the year where it is planes, trains, and automobiles. And this week I'm in Calgary, today and tomorrow. Thursday I'm going to be with CAFA, which is the Canadian Association of Farm Advisors. We're going to be with them in Elora, Ontario. Next week, where are we next week? Next week I'm in Nebraska. Then the back end of the week, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. Okay. So get to see so many different areas, talk to so many different people, and love to bring that back to you here on RealAg Radio. So appreciate the opportunity. And, I just love it. This is a great time of the year as we get into the, midpoint, well, kind of just getting it going in October, and it'll run like this every week through about the second week of December. Yeah. And then we take a few weeks off from travel. And then January is, oh boy. Sometime we should do like a thing where you can, maybe an audience member could travel with me and we could have a lot of fun. And I'm not sure you'd like it. I'm not sure you would like it. Anyway, let's get to that land value report. Okay, so Farm Credit Canada does a great job putting out their land value report, and they put it out for the first 6 months of the year. So January 25 through June 25 for the first 6 months. The Canadian average is 6%. It was mentioned on the show that's barely keeping up with inflation. Okay, so I guess essentially, you're sort of still doing okay, but not the greatest. Especially if you look at BC and Ontario, you're actually going down because they're both zero. The Prairie Province is doing a lot better. Manitoba was up 11.2%, Saskatchewan was up 6%, and Alberta was up 6.6%. So the prairies reasonably healthy in comparison to other areas. The province that had the highest, I mentioned, was Manitoba at 11.2%, but New Brunswick was at 9.4%. That would probably be on a little bit thinner trade of land. So all of this, its first 6 months, take it with a grain of salt. Remember, the national average for the complete year of 2024 was 9.3%. I think it's important, too, that we see that I heard an interview on Bloomberg about the U.S. housing market, and the gentleman made a really good point. Everybody talks about the national housing market. There's no such thing as the national housing market. It's a whole bunch of different zones and regions that sort of function in pods. Okay? Like, if you said, hey, the national real estate market was up 5%, it doesn't mean anything because it's such a wide range. And you kind of maybe apply that a little bit to land. Like, the BC number at 0, it really speaks to some of the struggles in the vineyard industry, for example. Right? A lot of vineyards for sale in BC, in the Okanagan Valley. There's been some real struggles. It's been tough. The other part about this is, as we see, and this is kind of the trend we've been seeing for the past number of years, land prices increasing, but at a decelerated rate. It does sort of poke at, this is where, everybody complains and laments the fact that there's maybe some outside investment in the industry in land. And hey, only farmers should be able to buy land. Well, sort of what happens in the futures market when the longs get out, we don't like it very much. We like when the longs are in the market. We don't like when the traders are short. We love when they're long. So we love them when they're with us on the upside, not so great when they're not with us on the downside. It would be a really bad thing for a lot of balance sheets and a lot of bank covenants if that number in 26 moves to a minus. Very bad. Very, very bad for a lot of producers. This industry is heavily levered. We don't really have a good idea in Canada about farm bankruptcies like they do in the United States. Farm bankruptcies are up pretty considerably in the U.S. I don't have the number handy here, but they're up considerably. We don't track them like that in Canada, which I think is kind of unfortunate. Maybe that needs to be a point number 9. We need more data transparency in Canada, not less. Really jealous a lot of times about some of the U.S. numbers that the volume of data that they get. We, like grain exports on a weekly basis. Hey, that would be fantastic. Why don't we try that? Nope. We don't even have, we don't even know what the box beef price is in Canada, you people. When we talk about the box beef price and the beef market update, we're talking about the U.S. number. We don't have it in Canada. I digress. So if there was a negative number on the land value report, that would be bad. Bad. I've always had this perception, though, that the Canadian land values are not as sensitive to farm profitability as we see in a state like Iowa. I don't know if that's actually true. And I know I've talked to JP Gervais about this from Farm Credit Canada, him and I in private conversations, and I can't remember what the heck he even told me. But that's always been kind of my perception, that it's a little bit more sensitive in the U.S. to some of the farm profitability as opposed to Canada. And they're just like the farm profitability issue is not as severe in Canada right now as it is in the United States for a number of different reasons. And I'm really trying to get my head wrapped around that, the why of that. Possibly, be careful. I don't want to state this as a matter of fact. I speculate that we're more likely to see land value drops in the U.S. than we are in Canada. Now, if there was a payment to U.S. farmers of a huge significant amount, like say they roll out a $16 billion program, that's not going to hurt land prices. And that's some of the criticism that people have is like, if you think that this money is staying in the back pockets of farmers, you are nuts. It's a rural stimulus package. The farmer will get the check, deposit the check, and immediately it goes into equipment, it goes into land, it goes into inputs. So this is where that farm program in the U.S. does hurt the Canadian farmer, because input prices, because of the size of the U.S. market, input prices are less likely to drop to come more in line with commodity markets, because the U.S. farmer has been stimulated with the cash. It's sort of like during COVID, when there was all the COVID payments. Remember those? And what happened with inflation? It's no different in this situation when it comes to farm costs. So that's where it does hurt the Canadian farmer. Now, where do we see, where are the best regions for investing in land? Well, I know JP has told me for the past couple of years, if they do a great job. They put out the land value report, and then they put out the land values relative to productivity, and they always point out Saskatchewan as one of the more good values when it comes to farmland. Saskatchewan audiences don't like me talking about that, but that's the land value report from FCC. We'd love your feedback on it. I'm watching it because I'm worried about the debt and the covenants and what chain reaction that causes. How many farms across this country were able to expand because they just re-levered the increased equity because of the increase in the land values? Really creating a separation of the okay farmers that maybe have to rent versus the farmers, that have really increased their wealth because they own land. It's sort of like the same thing in the housing market. This is where cost of housing is such a big critical, everyone thinks, I'm overusing that word critical. That's why land or housing prices are such an important topic, because that's where a lot of people's wealth is created. And if you can't afford to get into that market, no nest egg. And farming's kind of a similar sort of idea. Okay, when we come back, we're going to try to make some time for your feedback right after this. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola. It's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
Whether you're running a farm operation, in a career within an organization, starting your own business, looking for your dream job, operating a company in agri-food, or want to hone your overall life skills, this conference is for you. Celebrating over 10 years of bringing women in ag and food together, join the Advancing Women Conference in Niagara Falls on November 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register.
Did I say time for your feedback? I was kidding. We do not have any time. Hey, make sure you sign up for the RealAg Hockey Pool, realagriculture.com/hockey. It is fun, no cost to entry. It is brought to you by Cantera Seeds and Alliance Seeds. So go to it, realagriculture.com/hockey. And let me know on some of the topics we covered here today. We didn't have a guest. We just went front to back, my thoughts, and now I want yours. So send me your feedback, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. Remember, that's also a text line, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. Hopefully the Trump-Carney meeting goes well. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Cheers, everybody. And welcome to the bonus here on RealAg Radio. Hope you enjoyed today's show. I had a lot of fun. We don't need guests all the time. Like, what? Come on. We got our own little party going here. We don't need people to interrupt us. And we love having guests here. We always have guests. But today was a little bit different. Hope you enjoyed the format and the program. I really enjoyed putting it together for you. And continue your feedback. Like I said, shaney@realagriculture.com, or of course that RealAg feedback line and text line now as well, 855-776-6147. Make sure you enter that RealAg hockey pool, realagriculture.com/hockey, brought to you by Cantera Seeds and Alliance Seed. Okay, let's get to some of the top ag news stories of the day. So when we recorded the show, the meeting between Trump and Carney had not happened. Well, here we are. This is the benefit of downloading the podcast, because now we're going to give you what happened. Well, it seemed to go pretty good. I believe at this time they are in the back room and they are hashing some things out. If you look at the press conference that happened in the what has turned into a very gold Oval Office, there's a lot of gold. President Trump definitely likes gold. Prime Minister Mark Carney sat down with U.S. President Donald Trump at the White House today as trade disputes and tariffs continue to weigh heavily on Canada-U.S. relations. At the start of the Oval Office meeting, Trump described Canada and the U.S. as having a natural conflict over autos and steel, but added that the two countries share what he called mutual love. He even revived the long-running joke about annexing Canada, telling Carney, "The merger of Canada and the United States of America, I'm only kidding." So, anyway, don't get upset. Like, it's at this point, come on. I think we need to just get over it. It's interesting, though, how, I do lots of traveling in the U.S., and there was a period there where it was like, there was a lot of laughter about it. Other people would apologize to you a lot. Yeah. It's whatever. I'm not going to be offended by it. At this point, I think the ship has sort of sailed on it. And good to see President Trump said, "Hey, I'm only kidding." So there shouldn't be too much ramifications from that. The talks come as Trump defends his tariffs, calling them a success that's driving companies back to the United States. Carney, under pressure at home to ease economic pain, has resisted striking a deal that would accept the levies in exchange for avoiding even higher tariffs, a template President Trump has pushed with other trading partners. Yeah, it's this blanket tariff would be it would really suck. It would, to put it very, very succinctly to you, it would really suck. The two leaders were also expected to touch on defense, including Canada's request to join Trump's proposed Golden Dome missile shield, as well as broader foreign policy issues in Gaza and Ukraine. Looming over it all is the upcoming review of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, better known as CUSMA in Canada, USMCA in the U.S. Washington has hinted it may pursue separate deals with Canada and Mexico rather than keeping the trade pact trilateral. I talked about this in the show. Even slicing and dicing where it's not even just a bilateral between two countries, it would be like a multitude of deals. So one trilateral deal would turn into, like, say, 12 separate little guys. That's a mess. For now, officials on both sides are downplaying the likelihood of a breakthrough, calling the session a working visit. I was listening to Bloomberg Radio, who were very complimentary of Carney's approach. The one thing they did notice was different than the first meeting that went quite well. This one appears to have gone well, same, is the fact in the first meeting, if you remember, Carney interrupted Trump quite a bit. He would, he would like interject himself into the conversation. They said this time he was a lot more patient and he waited for his time to talk. That was one of the differences that Bloomberg Radio had pointed out. In terms of screwworm, Mexico has confirmed another case of the flesh-eating New World screwworm, raising fresh concerns near the U.S. border. The latest detection came in Nuevo León, where inspectors found an infested calf in the region south of Monterrey. Officials said all larvae were already dead or dying after antiparasitic treatment, and the rest of the herd showed no signs of infection. The Agriculture Ministry stressed the case that was unrelated to another detection in the state just 2 weeks ago. U.S. Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins said American teams will be on the ground within hours to verify the situation. She has faulted Mexico for weak oversight of cattle movements and fly trap maintenance. Now, some of that criticism ties to cattle coming up through Central America. The outbreak has strained cross-border livestock trade, with the U.S. keeping its border largely closed to Mexican cattle since May. Mexico has now recorded more than 6,700 animal infestations since the outbreak began last November. Now, we were talking about land values during the program, and the Saskatchewan government has created a new committee to gather feedback on the province's rules that limit who can own farmland. The review comes as declining profits in the grain sector have spurred discussion about the future market for land and at a time when many farmers are facing generational transfers. The new Farm Land Ownership Advisory Committee will consist of 3 members. Ken McDonald is the chair, Darren Kuski, and Kurt Chakosky. Oh boy. Those 3 gentlemen have they got some work to do in front of them. Quote here from Ag Minister Darrell Harrison, who said, "Our government wants to ensure that legislation meets the needs of Saskatchewan farmland owners. This committee's work will help inform the decisions we make regarding farmland ownership in our province. The committee will meet with stakeholders in October and November and then provide a summary for the provincial government to review. The Saskatchewan Farm Security Act generally limits purchases of farmland to Canadian citizens and permanent residents and corporations that are 100% Canadian owned. Non-Canadian individuals and entities are limited to owning 10 acres of farmland. However, exemptions can be granted by the Farmland Security Board. The board has a mandate to monitor and enforce the province's farmland ownership legislation independently of the government." Story from the Globe and Mail, Canada's merchandise trade deficit nearly doubled in August as U.S. tariffs continued to disrupt exports. Stats Canada reports exports fell 3%, while imports rose nearly 1%, pushing the trade gap to $6.3 billion, the second largest on record. The decline was broad-based, with shipments of unwrought gold down almost 12%, industrial machinery off 9.5%, and forestry and packaging materials down more than 10%. Lumber exports plunged over 25% to the lowest level since May of 2020, hit hard by Washington's new duties. So, a couple of different places to put your money. Bitcoin has been quite good over the past number of years. Another place is gold. Gold has surged to an unprecedented $4,000 a troy ounce, marking the first time the precious metal has ever reached that level. The rally, up more than 50% so far this year, has outpaced gains seen during the 2008 financial crisis and even the pandemic, making it gold's strongest run since the inflation shock of 1979. 1979, a great year. Lindsay and I were born that year. Analysts point to fears about the U.S. economy and the global role of the dollar, President Trump's push to reorder trade rules, White House's pressure on the Federal Reserve to cut rates, and the dollar's weakest first half in more than 50 years have all driven investors toward the safety of gold. At the same time, though, remember the last time the gold had a big run, it was during the financial crisis. The U.S. stock market's been on fire. It's been great. Not fire in a bad way, not a dumpster fire. It's been very good, performed very well this year, and led by the Magnificent Seven. So we got gold going up, we got Bitcoin that's performed well, and we got the stock market going well. The federal government shutdown has entered day 7 with no resolution in sight and tempers flaring on Capitol Hill. This is what we call a mess. On Monday, the Senate once again rejected rival funding bills, the 5th such failure. Democrats blocked a Republican stopgap bill, while Republicans dismissed a Democratic plan that tied government funding to extending Affordable Care Act subsidies, rolling back Medicaid cuts, and curbing President Trump's unilateral budget powers. President Trump told reporters he had spoken with Democrats, acclaimed Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries flatly denied. Schumer said Republicans are shouldering most of the blame in public opinion polls, while Democrats argue the expiring Obamacare subsidies must be renewed to prevent premiums from doubling for millions. A few cracks are appearing in GOP unity on the matter. Maine Senator Susan Collins is circulating the bipartisan discussion draft to reopen the government, while Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene broke with party leaders, saying she supports extending the subsidies after seeing the premium hikes hit her own family. She joins a small group of Republicans, including Senator Josh Hawley and Lisa Murkowski, defying the GOP leadership. One of the other big trade battles that is underway is U.S. and Brazil. There are signs of a possible thaw in these relations after months of escalating trade and political strain. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva and President Donald Trump held a 30-minute video call on Monday. And remember, they had met at that UN meeting. They were going to meet the week after. That got delayed. Well, they had their video call. The leaders exchanged personal phone numbers and agreed to meet in person soon, possibly at this month's ASEAN summit in Malaysia or later in Washington. I believe at that ASEAN summit, that is exactly when President Trump's meeting with President Xi as well. So at the heart of all this dispute, if you haven't been following this, Trump's decision earlier this year to hike tariffs on Brazilian coffee and beef from 10% to 50%, retaliation he linked to legal proceedings against former President Jair Bolsonaro. The move slashed Brazil's coffee exports to the U.S. by about 70%, sharply reduced beef shipments, and sent U.S. coffee prices soaring. Lula pressed Trump to roll back the extra 40% tariff and restore economic trust. Trump later named Secretary of State Marco Rubio to lead follow-up talks with Brazilian officials. So there's a lot from a trade perspective. You look at between now, here, October 7th today, and say December 31st of this year. So between now and the end of the year, we've got U.S.-China, we've got U.S.-Brazil, we've got Canada-Mexico-U.S., we've got Canada-China, we've got India working on trade agreements with both Canada and the U.S. or some sort of arrangement. So there is a lot in the air from a trade perspective, and that's creating a lot of uncertainty, and that is definitely reflected in the commodity market. And it's a disruption. It's a thickening of commodities' ability to move around the world, as it seems we're not dropping trade barriers. Countries are increasing them. And that's not good for an export-reliant country like Canada, indeed. Hope you enjoyed today's show and the top ag news stories of the day. Would love your feedback. My email address is shaney@realagriculture.com. Maybe you got a bit of a prediction on what happens in the Blue Jays series here. Does Vladdy continue rolling? How about that grand slam he hit on Sunday? Has that ball landed yet? Yeah. Like, if there was ever a ball that you thought may actually leave Rogers Stadium, that was that one. Kaboom. If you get some time, go on social media and look up the Yankees broadcast of that home run. It's so good. Yeah, it's so good. I have no sympathy for you Yankee fans. None. Nada. No sympathy. It was so funny. We're in the Nashville airport, and there's WestJet flights from Nashville to Calgary, Toronto, Edmonton, kind of all at the same time. There's a ton of Canadians in the airport. And there's also, I believe there was a flight to New York and one to Philly, kind of at the same terminal. And the pubs are really full inside and you could, every time that Toronto scored, it was just this ovation. And then all the New York Yankee fans putting their face in their soup, and gotta fire the manager, and what's wrong with Judge, and we need to fix the roster, and how are we getting chewed up by this 23-year-old pitcher nobody's ever heard of, you savage? So awesome. Let's close it out. Let's finish it, and let's move on to the next series, which would love. Absolutely. It's going to be this playoff baseball. There's nothing like it. There is nothing like it at all. There's a bit of a debate for you. Are the baseball playoffs the best playoffs in sports? Now, many of you are going to be biased. You're going to say, whoa, no, Shaun. It's the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I'm going to argue with you. I hear what you're saying. The Stanley Cup playoffs are great. It's a war of attrition. It's basically a 2-month slug of grinding out 4-7 game series rounds, and it's the best trophy. We can acknowledge that the Stanley Cup is the best trophy in all of professional sports. But does it provide the moment by moment drama? And somebody's going to say, baseball's boring. Nothing happened. I think Tyler McCann was on the show on Friday, and he was talking about how baseball, nothing happens, and he prefers rugby. I'll give you this. Rugby is the toughest sport on the planet. That is where violence happens, the contact, the physicality. I appreciate rugby. You need to learn to appreciate the moments in baseball. And the fact that there are pauses in between play creates massive amounts of drama in between each of the pitches, and the decision making based on the count and how many outs and how many people on base and the pitch selection, it creates the drama that baseball produces. It's great. Anyway. Okay, back to the feedback. If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. And don't forget to sign up for the Real Agriculture Hockey Pool, brought to you by Cantera Seeds and Alliance Seed, realagriculture.com/hockey. hockey. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio. We will chat again tomorrow. Thanks for joining us for the bonus, everybody.